Good morning and happy Friday. Thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Africa Good Morning. We are broadcasting the news making headlines across Africa. Now, my name is Aina Raisa Kweyo and alongside me is Ashwin Berry.
Now, today is Make a Friend Day. Obviously, we're already friends, so this advice is for you. Some say that the measure of our lives can be seen in our friends. We have all sorts of friends, best ones, long distance ones, and even ones that we call acquaintances. They help us through the bad times and dance along in the good times with us. Have a look at this video.
Welcome back. Now, in your top stories this morning, Ethiopian officials accused of extorting Tigrayan detainees. At least 1,000 Tigrayan, including United Nations staff, were arrested in 2 weeks in November 2021 in the capital of Addis Ababa, and this is according to the United Nations. The Ethiopian government says it only targets those suspected of supporting the rebels, but as profiling the detentions increased, so did the extortion of detainees by police and prison wardens, according to the victims and relatives of victims who spoke to Al Jazeera over the past months. We have become a commodity in prison, said Karubel, who spent up to 7 months detained in Addis Ababa facility until his family was asked to pay for his release. They slap a price on you. Then your loved ones have to find money and buy your freedom.
In our second story, Libyan Prime Minister survives assassination attempt. Assailants struck Libyan Prime Minister Abdul Hamid al-Beba's car with bullets on Thursday, but he escaped unharmed, a source close to him said, amid intense factional wrangling over control of the government. The incident happened as Beba was returning home and was described as a clear assassination attempt, but the attackers fled and the incident has been referred for investigation. If confirmed, an attempt to assassinate Beba could aggravate the crisis over control of Libya after he said he will ignore a vote scheduled by the Eastern-based parliament later on the same day to replace him. Armed forces have mobilized more fighters and equipment in the capital over recent weeks, raising fears the political crisis could trigger fighting.
Chinese military equipment boost for SAMIM. Southern African Development Community Mission in Mozambique will, during the course of the year, receive as yet unspecified Chinese military aid. The African Union said in a communique issued post a meeting by its Peace and Security Council that the regional bloc mission, widely reported as being under-equipped and manned, would provide a substantial additional equipment from the second batch of military aid being donated by the People's Republic of China to the AU to support the efforts of SAMIM. The aid is not specified in the communique, which states it is made by the continental body. No delivery date is given, with the communique only stating it is expected to be delivered to Nacala Port in Mozambique during 2022. The North Coast City Port is the deepest natural harbor on Africa's east coast.
Now in our next story, Zimbabwe ready for 6 more cyclones. 6 more tropical cyclones are likely to hit Zimbabwe before the end of the rainy season. Local government minister July Moyo said this on Wednesday during a cyclone recovery project ceremony in Harare. Zimbabwe during this rainy season had 2 cyclones, Ana, which left a trail of destruction, and Batsirai, which fortunately dissipated. Minister Moyo said predictions by the Meteorological Services Department have been accurate so far. Now, according to Meteorological Services Department, there is a projection of 6 more cyclones during the remainder of the current rainy season. Destructions caused during the rainfall season is not new in Zimbabwe. In the past, social, physical, and economic infrastructure has been affected. However, Tropical Storm Ana has made matters worse, causing 1,557 houses partially damaged between the 2021 to 2022 rainy seasons. The government says it is ready for the projected cyclones.
In our next story, Malawi Prison Service introduced Nzuzu Girls Private Secondary School. In a bid to ensure that quality education is being achieved for all, Malawi Prison Service has introduced Nzuzu Girls Private Secondary School. According to the statement made available on the service Facebook page, the school is situated within Mzuzu Prison campus. The statement stressed that the school will be accommodating all female inmates who will express interest to pursue secondary school education. Female prisoners will have access to education at this facility for free and will be provided with all the learning materials. The statement continued that the school has competent teachers who are both prison officers and some even civilians. Reformation of prisoners through formal education is possible, read the statement. Now, we will be right back after this commercial break. Stay with us.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Let's get into the second half of your top stories. Uganda ordered to pay $325 million to the DRC. The International Court of Justice on Wednesday set the amount of reparations Kampala must pay Kinshasa at $325 million for Uganda's invasion of Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo during the War of 1998 to 2003. Judges at the International Court of Justice ruled on Wednesday that Uganda should pay $325 million. Now, the court sets the total amount of reparations up to $325 million, said presiding judge Johan Donoghue. Uganda is to pay the sum in 5 annual installments of $65 million starting in September this year, she added. Decisions of the ICJ, which deals with disputes between states, are final and without appeal.
In our next story, Lieutenant Colonel Damimba declared president by Burkina Faso Constitutional Council. Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Damimba, who took power in a coup in Burkina Faso in January, has been declared president by the Constitutional Council, and this is according to AFP. In a decision notified to him on Wednesday, the Constitutional Council said that Master Henry Paul Damimba, Lieutenant Colonel of the National Armed Force, is the president of FASO since the 24th of January. In its session on the 8th of February, the Council took note of the resignation of Rock Mark Christian Kabore from his duties as president of FASO and officially noted the vacancy of this position as of the 24th of January. Master Damimba, who is also the head of state and Supreme Chief of Army, will take the oath of the office before the Constitutional Council. It is, however, not specified on which day he will be sworn in as the president, according to a judicial source who explained that it must be fixed by mutual agreement between the presidency and the Constitutional Council.
In our next story, Mozambique registered 3,135 leprosy cases in 2021, 52 more than 2020. This is according to health authorities. The disease is considered endemic in 66 of the country's 161 districts, despite having been declared eradicated in 2008, with the provinces of Nampula and Cabo Delgado in the north and Zambezia in the center having 80% of cases, according to the Deputy Health Minister Lydia Cardoso. The Deputy Minister said that the current incidence of leprosy in Mozambique could undermine the government's commitment to achieve the target of zero infections, zero deformities, and zero discrimination set for 2030. Mozambique was declared leprosy-free in 2008 when it had a rate of less than one case per 10,000 inhabitants. The criterion used to declare the elimination of leprosy, however, districts where the disease in the endemic was subsequently identified.
In our next story, Africa on track to control COVID-19 pandemic in 2022. Almost 2 years after Africa identified its first case of COVID-19, the World Health Organization finds that if current trends continue, the continent can control the pandemic in 2022. However, WHO warned that continued vigilance is key. Over the last 2 years, the continent has witnessed 4 waves of COVID-19, each with a higher peak or more total new cases than the previous one. The surge has been mostly driven by new variants of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which are highly transmissible, though not necessarily more fatal than the previous waves. Each subsequent wave has triggered a response that has been more effective than the previous, with each surge shorter by 23% on average from the one before. While the first wave lasted about 29 weeks, the fourth wave was over in 6 weeks, or about the fifth of the time.
We end our top stories in Namibia. Student unions are insisting that the University of Namibia and the Namibia University of Science and Technology let students register while looking for ways to settle their outstanding fees. This comes after the two universities said that some students owe them 480 million Namibian dollars in total and would therefore not be allowed to register for the 2022 academic year. National African Students Association Vice President Paulus Vihemba says the two institutions should let students register and allow them to settle their debts later. Vihemba says the institutions could also turn student debts partially into loans, so to be paid off when students start working, instead of withholding qualifications. Namibia National Students Organization NANSO spokesperson Esther Shakela yesterday said that stakeholders involved must find an amicable solution to accommodate all students. Now, UNAM spokesperson John Haufiku said current and former students collectively owe the university about 400 million Namibian dollars. That brings us to the end of our top stories. After the break, we'll be talking about the company Meltwater. That's an interesting name. Water melting.
Yeah.
All right, stick around. More.
Swiping or tapping your FNB Visa card is the safest, easiest, most rewarding way to transact. Because if you swipe your FNB Visa debit or credit card 3 times a month, you'll automatically be entered into the draw to win your share of a mammoth 250,000 Namibian dollars. Competition ends 15 February 2022. T's, C's and rules apply. Switch to FNB, Bank of the Changeables.
Thank you very much for rising with the stars. You are watching Africa Good Morning. Now, Nicolo is the Southern African Regional Manager for Meltwater, a global media intelligence and marketing SAS leader. He oversees the company's activities in parts of Africa, and today we chat about business, their global expansion, and how marketing and technology are part of this puzzle. Here is this interview.
Today we talk business, technology, and the relevance of marketing. And joining us in studio is Mr. Nicolo, the Southern African Regional Manager for Meltwater, a global media intelligence and marketing SaaS leader. He oversees business operations in Namibia, Zambia, and Botswana. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Glenora, and good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Just got into Windhoek and absolutely loving it.
Well, thank you for joining us. Getting right into it. You are a business strategist. So talk to us about the importance of having a business strategy that caters to the present but is also future forward in a global context, and how can businesses do this without getting ahead of themselves?
That's a really interesting question. So it seems that companies have been slowly but surely warming up to this idea that, especially with the way the pandemic hit, that we have to have business strategies that look outside of the four walls of our companies. And we have to be aware of what's going on, and we have to look at the future. So we've seen that business strategy has moved a lot from a day-to-day, this is our budget, this is what we're working on, this is the objectives we're trying to achieve, to a strategy of trying to anticipate what's coming. And there's a term that I like to use. It's like, okay, this is our marketing strategy, great, but what's next? What are our competitors doing? And the trick with that is that key teams, professionals and companies can often look at their communications and their marketing strategies around what their competitors are getting up to, and if they listen to what the public is saying and the sentiment around them, they might be able to get a glimpse of what will be coming next without getting too carried away and spending too much on testing things out that they're unsure of.
Okay, so touching on the evolution of marketing, or getting into how marketing is used in modern day, give us your take on the evolution of marketing and what businesses need to do better to reach a wider audience across the continent. I think you touched on it just a bit on it just now.
Thank you. Yeah, so leading into that forward-looking strategic setup, we found that a lot of professionals, either from agencies that get to work with a lot of brands, or the PR, communications and marketing experts from companies out there, that a lot of them really were able to make a big impact by relying on their gut feel and intuition, which is absolutely fantastic. But one thing that we find is getting an increasing trend, and where the world is evolving to, is that creatives and strategists are relying more on data-driven strategy to combine it with their gut feel, to be able to anticipate market moves better, to achieve better results in their marketing campaigns, and really have a big impact. So you'll see it in the rise of this new role that's coming up in communications and corporate affairs, and it's the idea that a branding and strategic executive exists. And there's quite a number of Namibian companies that have already jumped on this bandwagon.
Well, I didn't know you could combine your gut feeling with marketing data, and that can, help expand your company. Moving on to technology, we all know that technology has disrupted the way things have been done. And even more so, COVID-19 has also disrupted the way most companies operate. Give us your take on what lessons businesses have learned throughout the COVID-19 pandemic and what else they can do to better their reach.
Thank you. Many businesses have either experienced growth like they could not have ever imagined before, and we're fortunate, and unfortunately many businesses were not able to survive. The trend that we noticed coming through very heavily in this pandemic period that we're sort of winding down on now, hopefully, is that those who are agile and personable and moved into a respectfully digitally transformed space were able to be aware, stay recent and relevant of what the market out there wanted. And even though some companies, like Debonairs, weren't able to sell a single product during hard lockdowns, in Botswana, they actually, during the COVID period, sponsored something called the Sunday Soccer League, which is a corporate social soccer league, and they did hashtag Sunday Soccer is not dead. And that just led to them being able to survive that whole trend because the public really just lifted them up and supported them from a branding perspective, so that as soon as they came out of the hard lockdown, people were keen on them. They were loyal, they supported Debonairs because Debonairs kept them entertained when they couldn't go anywhere.
So they were able to survive
by listening and staying recent and relevant.
Yeah, thank you. How do business growth, how do you see business growth when it comes to African companies, and what type of innovations need to be applied to achieve this?
Businesses need to grow now. We need to rebuild, and it's something I'm incredibly passionate about in the Southern African market especially, is that if we have an optimistic outlook on what is possible, there's so much we can do together. And I'll get into a little bit more about that later, but the one thing that's really evident is, even though you might not think it, people have actually traveled more than ever before over the last 2 years.
Really?
I know, it's a very silly thought, unless you think about it in this way. So, what did you do during the hard lockdown? Spend a lot of time on social media, maybe?
Yes, I did. I was at home on my computer most of the time. Yes.
Was that content just from Namibia?
No.
So did you see things that were happening all around the world? I mean, what about that hashtag nature is healing thing that happened straight away when people started posting those funny pics of dolphins in Venice and the likes of that? So there's this idea that people had an opportunity to transcend their geographic boundaries during this time. And something I've noticed that businesses that are, even though you might only be selling in Namibia, if you're looking at what people are getting engaged upon and excited upon, then you can pull that in and you can use that to grow a lot faster.
Okay, moving on to our final question. Tell us about the panel slated for the 16th February.
That is really exciting. So as I said, the Southern African Innovation Panel is something that I started in February last year. And we've had 3 events where we basically get together with market leaders and thought leaders from Botswana, Zambia, and in Namibia. We've had the likes of Chumi Okpona, the head of strategy, another one of those titles, from Nedbank Namibia. Now in the most recent one, we had Margaret Gustavo from NIPB. And we really sit down and look about what trends are coming, how can we share stories from the different markets so that we can innovate and grow together, and what lessons do we have for PR executives and marketing executives that they can take away straight away, plug into their business, and run from there. And that's something that Meltwater has really started up and is driving. And as you know, we really specialize in looking at the outside world with media intelligence. And in that way, we've been empowering these thought leaders to share their stories so that our audience can pick up on that trend.
Wow, thank you so much. There we have it. So today we spoke to Mr. Nico Lowe, and we talked on business technology and the relevance of marketing.
Swiping or tapping your FNB Visa card is the safest, easiest, most rewarding way to transact. Because if you swipe your FNB Visa debit or credit card 3 times a month, you'll automatically be entered into the draw to win your share of a mammoth 250,000 Namibian dollars. Competition ends 15 February 2022. T's, C's and rules apply. Switch to FNB, Bank of the Changeables.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Now, the Namibian Ports Authority's Namport $4 billion container terminal built on reclaimed land just off the harbor at Walvis Bay was a justified, solid business case. That is not just an asset to Namibia, but to the rest of SADC too. About 30% of the parastatal's container handling is for landlocked neighboring states that recognize the port of Walvis Bay as a gateway to their international trading partners. When the Ports Authority was established in 1994, government directed it to establish the port to cater for the entire SADC region, and it's aggressively marketing this mandate, considering the terminal is a long-term asset with enough place for regional partners to conduct their business trade from. Have a look.
Good morning, Africa. My name is Adam Hartman for Namibia Media Holdings. Namport, not so long ago, commissioned its $4 billion container terminal, which was built on 40 hectares of reclaimed land and has increased the Port Authority's capacity to handle containers by 750,000 units, which brings the total capacity of Namport to handle its containers to 1 million units. 30% of the container handling is done for landlocked Southern African countries, which Namport depends very much upon, and vice versa too. Landlocked nations see Namport at Walvis Bay on the west coast of Namibia as a gateway to their foreign markets and partners. And so we spoke to Elias Mwenyo, who is the executive for commercial services at Namport, for him to explain the relevance this container terminal has, not only for Namibia, but for the Southern African region as a whole, and their aggressive measures or intentions to market Namport as a valuable and the better alternative for SADC nations to import and export their goods from.
When the new container terminal was commissioned in 2019, obviously, but then container throughput was on the downside. But then August 2019, that's when we commissioned, and in March 2020, that's when the COVID-19 pandemic hit the shores of Namibia. It was quite a scary period. We thought the container throughput was going to be eroded, but to the contrary, that's the period actually that we received a lot of container vessels that were diverted from other ports as a result of the management of the outbreak at other ports. The port of Walvis Bay was very well prepared by then, and we took a strategic decision not to show away container vessels. So it also gave us an opportunity to test our capabilities in terms of container handling. The new container terminal actually came at the right time if you may recall, prior to the construction of the container terminal, we ran out of capacity. So we needed to create additional capacity to cater for the ever-increasing demand, not just only for Namibia, but transshipment and also cross-border cargo. When we established, or when the Port Authority was established in 1994, government directed the authority to establish the port not only to cater for Namibia, but for the entire SADC region. I always say that our corridors, or the Walvis Bay corridors, are actually the future of the ports, because Namibia is it's a big country with a small population. We translate into less purchasing power. So the port infrastructure can actually cater for the entire SADC region. So far, 30% of the cargo that we handle is contributed by cross-border volume. The greatest success to date is that we are now in the league of handling what we call the big ladies, the big container vessels of 300 meter plus. We could not handle these containers before the construction of the new container terminal, but now we have now joined that league, and it strengthens our connectivity insofar as serving the hinterland market and the west coast of Africa is concerned. The capacity of the new container terminal stands at 750,000 TEUs, and we are only doing almost 10-15% of the capacity. So with our partners internationally and regionally, there is quite room to handle more cargo, and we are doing that aggressively. We have built relationships with both the carriers, the shipping lines, the freight forwarders, cargo owners. So we are on a positive trajectory to make sure that the new container terminal remains relevant and does not turn into a white elephant. Regional trade is improving, and that in itself is already it's a positive, and we really look forward to handle more cargo, and we remain happy.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. Now, wherever you go, no matter what the weather is, I advise that always take your own sunshine. Now, speaking of which, let's take a look at what the weather looks like in your area.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Now, depending on how you view things, perhaps it would seem arrogant of any single state in Africa to assume the right to call itself the champion of nature conservation and environmental care. Most African countries do that, and if you look at the map, you'll see that the Zambezi Valley is no exception. Pictures like these can be likened to thousands made in any Southern African state. Now, we have picked up this post on Facebook site on the Zambezi Valley Conservation Network. The post reads, 40 years of conservation courage. Over 40 years, the Zambezi Society has built up what can never be rushed: trusted partnerships, scientific-based goals and action, excellent relationships with Zimparks and other stakeholders, and a vision that includes a resilient future, one that supports biodiversity and embraces sustainability on a universal scale. Have a look. This is Africa. Good morning. Let's get into your economic news stories. Shall BP halt operations indefinitely at Southern Africa's biggest crude oil refinery? BP and Shell will next month halt operations at Sapref indefinitely as they mull over the future of the refinery. The decision has been taken to allow an informed finalization on the various options available to the shareholders, a sale option being the most preferred, the company said in a joint statement on Thursday afternoon. Until decisions about the future of the plant have been made, including a possible change of ownership, the Sapref shareholders are unable to commit to further investment in the refinery. A spend freeze and a pause of refinery operations will begin no later than the end of next month, Shell and BP said. While the pause of operations will be for an indefinite period, the shareholders said the refinery may possibly be restarted in the future, including in the event of a sale. Located in Durban, Sapref is the largest crude oil refinery in Southern Africa and accounts for 35% of South Africa's refining capacity. Shell and BP said they will use other existing assets and trading arrangements to ensure the ongoing security of fuel supply to the country and their consumers.
In our next story, entrepreneurs call for Mozambique and South Africa border to open at 24 hours. The Confederation of Economic Association of Mozambique, the country's largest employers association, is calling for Mozambique's busiest land border crossing with South Africa to operate 24 hours a day. In a statement, the business association claims that the limitation of opening to daytime hours only constrains circulation between the two countries. The objective is to solve the congestion caused by an increase in cross-border traffic destined for Porto of Maputo, located 100 kilometers from South Africa, and which drains the large amount of ore from the country. The CTA also wants 24 hours operation to include permission for trucks to circulate after 10 p.m. in order to ensure greater fluidity in the import and export flow.
All right, now in Angola, feed shortages affect the supply of fish to markets. The feed shortage in Lunda Sul province is creating enormous difficulties for fish farmers, causing a significant reduction in the supply of tilapia in local markets. Despite this challenge, in the more than 470 tanks, which function as a bank for the production of germplasmas and a house of flattening, the presence of kakusos and catfish is visible in quantity. The infrastructure is managed by individual farmers and associates in all the municipalities of the province of Lunda Sul. According to the Provincial Director of Agriculture, Nelson Sengwetali, the investments mark the relaunch of aquaculture that began in 2012 in the commune of Mona Quibundo, with the launch of the first fingerlings to the fish ponds and multiplication of cassava cuttings with a short vegetative cycle 6 to 8 months within the framework of 2 projects financed by the PADES Economic and Social Development Support Program. Nelson Sengwetali affirmed that the partnership between the government and the Sociedade Miniera de Catoca aims to take advantage of the agricultural potential of the region to guarantee self-sufficiency in fish and mitigating dependence on the costs or difficulty in accessing feed to feed the fish, especially in the fattening phase, is the weak point of the breeders.
Municipalities' creditors get payouts from VBS liquidator as first dividend is declared. More companies and municipalities whose money went up in smoke when a VBS Mutual Bank went under will be getting some payments back. VBS liquidator Anush Rupal said some of the defunct banks, creditors have received first dividends since the bank was placed under liquidation in 2018. Some 2.3 billion rand was stolen from the bank through fraud. Anush said on Thursday that he has started paying the first liquidation dividend to preferential and concurrent creditors after the Master of High Court gave him the green light on the 28th of January. As first liquidation dividend of 7 cents in the rand is being paid to all proven concurrent creditors, this amount is approximately 159 million rand, of which approximately 110 million rand will be paid to relevant municipalities, said the liquidator in a statement. He said concurrent creditors who lodge valid claims include 13 municipalities, various business depositors, retail depositors, and supplier creditors.
Now, just now we'll be crossing over to your sports news with Ari. But before that, economic indicators.
Welcome back. In our sports news, Africa Good Morning's Cape Town-based correspondent Ari Gougaard gives us an update of the Beijing Winter Olympics, from figure skating to ice hockey, English Premier League and some tennis update. Let's have a look.
Good day, everyone. It's time to talk international sport again, and we start off with the Winter Olympics that's taking place in Beijing in China at the moment. It's the 24th Winter Olympics. Lots of action happening there, and we start off with the ice skating, and it's the figure skating for men. And the result that came in was that Nathan Chan of the USA, he won the gold medal. Great performance from him. It was a tough competition. Two skaters from Japan that was challenging Nathan Chan quite a bit, and they came in second and third. That is Yumo Kajiyama, he was in silver place, and then Shama Uno that got the bronze medal. So gold medal going to Nathan Chan of the USA. Let's continue with some news from the Beijing Olympics, and it is the women's ice hockey. And there it is Canada that just reaffirmed that they're one of the strong favorites to win the title. They beat the USA in the group stages by 4-2. They now lead Group A. They've got 12 points after 4 games. And it is in Group B, that's Japan, that's doing very well. They've got 9 points after 4 games at the moment. And they had a tight game against the Czech Republic. That was Japan, and they managed to beat them by 3-2. Third place in Group B at the moment is Sweden, and that is after they beat Denmark by 3-1. Let's continue with some English Premier League. That is midweek games that's played, and it is Manchester City that still leads, and they opened up a big lead now in the English Premier League. That's because they have had a good win against Brentford at home, and the score there was 2-0 in favour of Manchester City. So they've got a 12-point lead now at the moment. They've played 2 games more than Liverpool, but still it's a very healthy lead. Manchester City, after 24 games, they've got 60 league points. Then Liverpool, they've played 22 games, they've got 48 points. And Chelsea in third place, they also played 24 points like Manchester City, and they've got 47 league points. Other midweek games that was played, the results we can give is Norwich and Crystal Palace played 1-1 draw. And then Southampton, they beat Tottenham Hotspur. It's a great win for for Southampton to beat Tottenham Hotspur. They played that game at Tottenham Hotspur, so the score there was 3-2 in favour of Southampton. Leeds and Aston Villa, they drew a game. There was lots of goals in that game. The score in that game was 3-3. And let's continue with some tennis news. There's 2 big tournaments happening, one in Europe and one in the USA on the men's circuit, on the ATP Tour. And let's start off with the one on the European Tour. It is the ABN AMRO Rotterdam Open, that's championship that's taking place in the Netherlands. And news there is that the British tennis players did very well there. Andy Murray is a legend of tennis, very experienced, and in the round of 32, he beat Alexander Bublev, and the score there was 7-6 and 6-4. So his countryman Cameron Norrie also did great. He beat Karen Shagadanov of Russia by 6-4 and 7-6. So that was in the round of 16. This is an ATP 500 Tour event. Then also in Dallas, in the USA, it is a Dallas Open Championship that's taking place at the moment. And the news from there is that John Isner of the USA at the marathon game against Kevin Anderson of South Africa, all 3 sets went to tiebreak. So the score was in favour of John Isner. He won by 7-6, 6-7 and 7-6. And another round 16 result is Taylor Fritz that beat Jack Sock, his countryman, and the score there was 6-1 and 6-4. On to some Formula 1 racing news, and it's still in the news what happened last year in the last race of the Formula 1 season, and that was when the safety car was deployed, or was taken off the track, so to speak, in the last race and the last lap of the 2021 season. And that resulted in Max Verstappen winning the championship, and Lewis Hamilton was very frustrated, and he's close to announcing that he might not even drive this year. But news from the Formula 1 at the moment is that race director Michael Macy is still under investigation. He's the race director, and new evidence came out now from the Formula 1 is that there's radio messages on tape that indicate that Michael Macy might have listened to the Red Bull director Jonathan Wheatley and instructions that he gave, and that influenced him to make that call end of last year. And with that, I conclude the international sporting news for today. Have a great day, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning throughout the week as we've been bringing you the news from 7 a.m. talking about everything happening in the African continent and beyond. Now, if you perhaps missed today's top stories at the top of the hour, worry not. Here are some of the headlines. Ethiopian officials accused of extorting Tigrayan detainees. Libyan Prime Minister survives assassination attempt. Chinese military equipment boost for Samim. Zimbabwe ready for 6 more cyclones. Girls' private secondary school, Malawi. Shall BP halt operations indefinitely at South Africa's biggest crude oil refinery. Nathan Shen is winning by not trying so hard to win. Those have been our stories.
Thank you very much for joining us on this Africa Good Morning edition. We do welcome your remarks regarding our show. You can email them to us. Our email is agm_2cents@nmh.com.na. Alternatively, we are on Facebook and Twitter. That's at Africa Good Morning. We also have a website. It's called One Up To. Please visit us for more content that you love to see. We encourage you to get vaccinated, wear your mask, and avoid unnecessary public gatherings. Happy weekend, everyone. Enjoy yourself. All my love, all my light.
See you Monday.